All right, folks. So basically, I've been getting a lot of questions about knee pain. Whether you're weightlifting or you're running, whatever the case is, a lot of people tend to have knee pain. Okay, this is a pretty common thing that I work with a lot of the time. So let's talk about it. All right. So, one of the biggest misconceptions of joint pain is the fact that if you're having pain in particular in that joint, the problem must be that joint, right? Something must be wrong with the knee. And so people get real quick to go and jump and get a surgery or something like that. But most of the time, from my experience, the chances are of the knee being the cause of the pain is actually very slim. Not unless you fell on it or, had some kind of blunt trauma to it. But if you're just getting a nagging knee pain from exercise, chances are something else is not working properly. Either another muscle is tight, it's inactive, or whatever the case is. And so now that in turn affects the knee. So it's usually something higher up on the kinetic chain or lower. For instance, in regards to the knee, it may be the ankle that's not working properly. It may be the hip, or it may be both. So you can really test your mobility, right, to see how well you move in regards to your hip and your ankle, and then from that you'll be able to determine, maybe I need to work on that, and that will in turn ease up my knee pain. So starting from the bottom, the ankle. Now chances are, if you've got imbalances between your left and your right ankle, and maybe you rolled your left ankle a couple times, and so that left ankle is a little bit tighter than the other, or a lot a bit tighter than the other, chances are that left ankle, that tightness in that left ankle is going to manifest in knee pain on the left side. You see, because now the inability of that ankle to work properly now works up. Something else suffers. Okay, I'm going to equate that to like a restaurant. Let's say you own a restaurant. You have the best chefs in the country, but your waiters and your waitresses are not doing their job. They're writing down the wrong orders. So now if they're writing down the wrong orders and the chefs are cooking the wrong things, that's really going to hurt your business, right? And so now if the waiters and the waitresses don't do their job, then now the chefs have to go and take the orders and then go run in the kitchen and cook, you see. And so now what that does is that's going to burn out your chefs. That's just doubling their workload. So the same thing goes for the human body. If the knee has to do the job of the hip and the ankle, that's how you burn out your knees, and then in result you have knee pain. So my advice, if it is an imbalance in your ankle, it'll display itself as tightness in the calves, tightness in your anterior tibialis, your gastrocnemius, your soleus, right? All of those muscles surrounding the shins, right? Gastrocnemius is on the back, soleus is on the back, anterior tibialis is on the front, right? And those muscles basically pull the foot up and down, you see. And so when those things are tight and the tissue there is all jacked up, that's gonna manifest itself in your feet and in the knee above, and the hip, and all the way up, all the way into your neck, even depending on how serious the issue is and how much you're compounding it on a day-to-day basis. So I would suggest to get some kind of massage, foam roll it, get a trigger point ball, work on that mobility, that range of motion there, and start stretching it out and increasing that range of motion. Okay. Next is going to be hamstrings and glutes, right? Now I see a lot of people, they have a very limited range of motion in their squat. Their deadlift, often they round out at the back when they deadlift. And so what these things tell me is that the hamstrings and the glutes are not strong and they're not working at an optimal rate. And so now, if your glutes, which are your hip extenders, right, your butt cheeks, right, the muscle in your butt, right, that muscle that all the girls are trying to get and they're showing it off on Instagram, right, that nice round ass muscle, that's your glutes, okay? And that's the biggest muscle in the body. So if that's not working, you have your largest muscle in your entire body that's not doing its job. That's a recipe for disaster. So anything that's going to activate that glute, hip bridges, deadlifting, whatever you got to do, kickbacks, just to get that muscle stimulated so that nervous system can start firing that muscle, that's what you need to do. You need to get your hamstrings working, right? You need to get your hamstrings more flexible, right? A lot of people have a very difficult time reaching down and touching their toes while keeping their back straight. A lot of people can't do it. A lot of people can't even bend down and get into a deadlift position on a barbell without rounding out at the back. And you'll see a lot of people, they'll deadlift and their back will round out and they'll pull and it'll just look nasty, right? And you know, their back will just look like it's just ready to snap. Boom, done, over. And a lot of people are afraid to deadlift because of that. A lot of the time it's because the glutes are shut off, the hamstrings are not working, right? And so you start turning those glutes on, you start turning those hamstrings on, you start training those muscles to work correctly, that problem goes away. You see? And so now you don't have to lift with your back because now you're lifting with your glutes. You're using the leverage of your hips in order to drive those hips forward and in turn standing straight up, picking up that weight. So now let's relate that back to the knee pain. So your glutes, your hip extenders, they don't work, right? And then what I see a lot of people doing is they're doing tons of sit-ups because they want this six-pack, right? They want abs. They want their abs to show desperately, right? Because summer's right around the corner and they want to show out. But the problem is that when you're hitting all these sit-ups, you're cranking your neck, right, if your abs are weak, and then your hip flexors are tight, and you're constantly hinging at the hip, flexing the hip. And so I see a lot of people, what they do is they're not working on their glutes, which is their hip extensors, and then they're working on, you know, just cranking their hip flexors, right? Crunches, getting the knees to the forehead, or whatever ridiculous stuff that people do to get this six-pack going, right? And so what happens is now you got weak glutes and you got really tight hip flexors. So now people walk around and you'll see this look where people poke out their butt, right? Kind of, and they have like this real big arch in the back. You can see it in the lower back. Those hips, it'll be like this here. People have a drastic S curve and their abs will kind of just hang out, right? And the reason for that is because the hip flexors are tight, the abs are still weak, and the glutes are shut off. And chances are, if they're squatting, they're probably not really going into a deep range of motion, and their quads are tight, and I'm gonna get into that in a second too, which in turn ultimately affects the knees. So, increase mobility in your ankles, turn on your glutes, turn on your hamstrings. Now, the next and last thing, primarily, of what you're gonna have to do is lay off the leg extensions, okay? I know you wanna develop, you know, your quadriceps, those muscles on the front of the thigh, right? You want to get some nice big full meaty thighs. I understand that, but at the same time, if your knees are killing you or your knees are starting to bother you, chances are you have a severe imbalance in between your quads and your hamstrings. Most people do in the first place because your quadriceps is a way bigger muscle than your hamstring. And we're so anteriorly dominated, right? People work their biceps more than anything. People work their chest more than anything. And people work their quads more than anything. It's all about a six-pack, but not many people talk about how to get your back chiseled, right? That's not a thing people are really concerned with. They're concerned with what's going on in the front. But then things break down in the front when you ignore the back, okay? So quadriceps, if you're doing those leg extensions, flexing that knee, trying to get those quads, you know, nice, big, thick, and defined, and you're not hitting your hamstrings are tight, your glutes are shut off, and your hip flexors are tight, you're literally tensing up and tightening up those quadriceps, and that's pulling on the knee, okay? And that pulling on the knee, that can affect the kneecap, the side of the knee, all these different things, right? Wherever you get your pain at. Chances are tight and overly dominant quadriceps is causing a lot of your knee pain. So if you can just chill out on the leg extensions, if you could just chill out working your quads, and start working on your posterior chain, everything going on the back, developing a greater range of motion, mobility, and strengthening the glutes and hamstrings. If you do that, that right there is going to make your life so much easier and your knees are going to feel so much better, completely different. Okay, so as far as pain, do those 3 things I told you. Okay, mobility, getting rid of your imbalances, turning on the muscle, and that's pretty much it. Okay, just work that posterior chain and stop tightening up those hip flexors and those quads. Hope it helps. Take care. I'm out.